In today's video, I'm going to show you how to build this basic facility issue reporting tool Canvas app. And what this allows us to do is we can submit a request and we can also view the historical. So we can come in here and see which requests we've submitted and we can kind of see what status is. For example, we've got a completed one here and the notes from the person that completed this. So we built this entire Canvas app and then we build a way to manage it using a model-driven app. Now here's the model-driven app, and this would be the admins or the facility management team that come into this, and they can come in here and manage everything about this request. They can come in here, add the comments, close it out, make adjustments, and then they can set the whoever's going to receive these. So this in case we could add, multiple people, and all these people would receive the email whenever a submission is created. So I walk you through how to use an automation to do that process as part of creating both the Canvas app and the model-driven app. And this is a great way to very quickly roll out a lot of functionality. You build a very standard form for submitting the request or the issue or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then you build the model-driven app to manage that process. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this content if you found it helpful. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing we need is a solution, and regardless whether you're using SharePoint or Dataverse, I recommend starting with a solution just to store everything. That way, if you've got any automations or anything like that, that it's all encapsulated in one package that's very easy to find all the related content. So in this case, we're going to call it the facility issue reporting, and we'll go ahead and select our publisher here, and let's go ahead and create. All right, let's go ahead and create our first table. So let's go to table and we'll do advanced properties here. And this is going to be our facility issue report. And so we're going to store all the information for each of our different reports that are submitted. And let's go ahead and come down here. Let's go ahead and turn on leverage quick create form right away. Now, I do usually recommend audit changes and track changes. Again, this does take up a lot more data if you do that. So if you are on a finite amount of information on your plan, you may not want to turn these on. But if you want to be able to track changes and see how things are being changed over time, then you would want to select and turn these on. And let's go ahead and hit save. All right, let's go ahead and select our columns here. So we don't need our created by, import, or modified on, and we really don't need our created on also. So let's just unselect all those, and then we can add all of our columns. Let's go ahead and add our first one, and that's going to be our reported by. And this is going to be a lookup column. We want to be able to select the person that is submitting this. And we'll use our users table for this. All right, let's go ahead and save that. And I forgot to unhide our name field. Let's go ahead and find our name primary here. And I'll go ahead and put that in the front. Actually, we'll just hide this too. I don't think we really need this. All right, let's go ahead and change the name of this. And you might be wondering, why didn't I change the name when I created the table? And for mine, every time I create a table, I know that the primary name is going to be the name field. So when I'm looking for it, I always know what I'm looking for. It makes it a lot easier to find. Just my approach for how to do this. And let's go ahead and do issue short name. I think that makes sense. So essentially, this is going to be like the title for the submission. It's just going to be a very short, less than 850 characters. And again, you could decrease this if you want it to be even shorter than that. But we want to have a short title for what this is. That way, when we're looking at this, we can kind of find what we're looking for. Usually it's going to be a keyword search also. So if you need to search for it, you'll be able to search for the keyword associated with that submission. And let's go ahead and turn on sortable and hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add our reporter's email. And that will be a email field. So let's go ahead and select that. And let's go ahead and make sortable. And let's go ahead and adjust this. Oftentimes the email is longer than 100 characters. It's rarely 1,000 characters, but you can probably pick something a little bit shorter. In this case, since it's an email, I don't think there's a problem in adding a little extra space there. So we'll just make it 1,000. And then we want to have the reporter's organization. So let's go ahead and add that. Now this one we want to have a choice column. And if you have a standard, every app has kind of the same organizational layout, you can just create a new choice. In this case, we're just going to type in our options here. And for this, we'll say, I don't know, headquarters, sales, IT. That's probably good for this. You can add as many as you want into here. And let's go ahead and make this sortable and hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add the floor that this was observed. So we'll say floor observed, and this will be a choice column. And again, we're just going to go ahead and type these in here. And for this, let's don't forget about the basement. And maybe this building has a ground level, which isn't necessarily the first floor. And then we've got a first floor, and then the second floor. And we'll go ahead and make this a 4-story building. So we'll stop at the 4th floor here, but you'll have to make this whatever makes sense for your setup. And let's go ahead and again make this sortable. And this one we don't need it to be searchable, and hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add the room or area observed. Oops. And for this, we'll do a single line of text, and 100 characters is probably sufficient. And this will just allow them to say room 315 or whatever it is, and then maybe a description, maybe it's the conference room or something like that. So we'll go ahead and hit save. And let's go ahead and add location description. Now this is where they're going to actually describe what's going on. We'll call it location issue description. And we're going to give them a little bit more text here. Let's go ahead and give them, I don't know, 400 characters maybe is sufficient. And again, what you want to do is test this out and say, what are you looking for as far as the location of the issue description? For example, it'll say something like room 315, ceiling tile in right corner of the room is moldy, right? So whatever they're going to be expected to type about it is going to have to fit in the character account. So you're going to make sure you give them enough space where they can provide a detailed enough description for you to find out what the issue is or where it is inside of the location. And let's go ahead and we don't need it to be searchable. And we'll turn searchable on again and hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add another column. And this one's going to be our issue category. And this will be a choice column. And again, we'll go ahead and type these in here. And our first one might be an accessibility issue. Maybe it's just not accessible to our disabled employees. So we want to make sure that we have an option for them to report those kinds of issues. Maybe there isn't an elevator for somebody that's in a wheelchair to get to the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th floor. Not really an ideal work location for that employee. And let's go ahead and call the next one building damage. And maybe this is the wall, door, ceiling. We'll say flooring, and then we'll add an etc. on there. And let's go ahead and add another choice here. And we'll say this one is our cleaning sanitization. And then I'll go ahead and add a bunch of other ones here. All right, so I went through and added a bunch of the obvious or more common examples here. Now, in the case of the safety hazard or a security concern, I went ahead and added a color code for those. I want those to be drawing attention to whenever a safety hazard or a security concern is selected. And the rest of them you could add colors to if they matter to you as far as really drawing attention to them. I don't recommend having a color for this many different options. It's just too much. It'll make it harder to see what's going on unless you are really color perceptive, and most people aren't. So if you just draw attention to your most obvious or biggest issues, in this case, safety hazard or security concern, that's usually sufficient. So let's go ahead and save this. All right, let's go ahead and add our date observed. Maybe we'll call it date first observed. Yeah, I think that looks good. And this will be a date column. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and select date and time. Let's go ahead and save. Let's go ahead and not make this searchable. And we'll go ahead and sort it and hit save. Let's go ahead and add an impact level now. So this is the impact assignment for the issue. So let's go ahead and make that a choice column. We'll go to low. And again, we want to make sure we have colors for these as well. Again, you don't necessarily need colors for all of them, but since we only have 4, I went ahead and added a color for each. So we can kind of identify the more serious towards the critical here. And you don't necessarily need a critical. You could just say low, medium, and high, and your high is your critical at that point. But in this case, we'll just have these 4 options here. And let's go ahead and save. All right, let's go ahead and add some yes, no options here. So we're going to go ahead and call this a safety hazard. And this one will be a yes, no option here. And we don't need this to be searchable. Let's go ahead and save. And we'll add one more yes, no option here. And we'll say immediate attention. So is the issue requiring immediate attention? And let's go ahead and put yes, no in here. And we don't need it to be searchable. And we'll hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add a status. So we'll call this facility issue status. And I'll make this a choice column here. And let's go ahead and type these in here. And this would be in review. Work order submitted. And then we've got our hold, admin closed, and completed. Now you could also put admin closed and completed the same way, but the way that I'm defining this is that completed means you actually took some sort of action, you submitted a work order. Admin closed, maybe you couldn't find the issue, or after you looked at it and figured out that there really wasn't an issue there, that you closed it out. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at this here. And I went ahead and added some colors on here also, just so I can key in on specifically in review. So I wanted to have the biggest difference in color between the in review and the completed, because I really want to make sure that in reviews get worked on immediately. And then we've got the other colors here. Now you don't necessarily, like I said, need a color for all of the different statuses, especially when you've got 4 or 5 or 8 or 9 or 10 or however many different statuses you've got in here. But I think this works for this. So let's go ahead and hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add a resolution notes. And this will just be a multi-line of text. So we can explain what the resolution is and how we resolved it. Or in the case of admin closed, why we closed it out. I'm gonna make sure we have some notes in there to help the user understand kind of what happened. And let's go ahead and make that sortable and hit save. And then we're gonna go ahead and add a date closed. And this will just be a standard date only option here. You don't need that to be searchable. I do like things to be sortable, and let's hit save. All right, so I think that's pretty much all of the fields that we're gonna need. I think that's a good start here. All right, let's go back to our tables here. And we're gonna go and add another table. And this one's gonna be our facility issue reporting notify list. And let's go ahead and add the leverage to quick-create. Now what this is going to be is basically when a new request is coming in, these are the people that are going to get notified about that request. Now this one, we don't need it to be user or team. We just need it to be organization. So we'll adjust that and hit save. Now let's go ahead and add a lookup. And this is just going to be our person using our users table. And hit save. All right, that is pretty much it. Now we can go ahead and create our apps. So let's go to our app area here, and we're going to go ahead and create an app. And in this case, it's going to be a Canvas app. And again, you can do this entire process using SharePoint. All the things that we're going to do in this first portion of the video will work inside of a SharePoint-based approach also. Let's go ahead and call this the facility issue reporting form. And let's go ahead and create. All right, let's go ahead and adjust our settings here. And what we want to do is we want to automatically create our environment variables. We'll hit OK here. And let's go to our updates. We want to use modern controls. And let's go ahead and close this. And then we can adjust our theme here. Add our theme. And again, this is my standard approach here. So I'll just go ahead and add that in there. And we'll hit create. All right, so now we've got our theme in here. Let's go back to our page layout here. And let's go ahead and add a new screen. Now for this one, we're just going to use this header and footer option here. And we'll just delete this page out of here. And then we'll add one more screen. And we're going to use a pre-designed one here for success. So we'll add that in there. And we'll go ahead and call this our screen. And we'll call this one our thank you screen. Now you could also put in, the word thank you, or you can change this thing around a little bit. Let's go ahead and adjust this a little bit. Let's go ahead and adjust our width. And it's basically set to our circle width. So let's take a look at our circle here. And let's go ahead and change this to, I don't know, we'll go with 300. And we'll do the same thing here for 300. Yeah, make it a little bit bigger on the screen. I think that looks pretty good. We're not really going to do a lot with this page here. We're going to focus mainly on our form. Now, we don't need this for our form, so we're going to get rid of that. And for our header, let's go ahead and add an image. And let's go ahead and adjust our image height. We want this to be that height, so that way it's always going to match the height that we've got in there. And I'll go ahead and copy that because I want to set that the same for the width. I always want it to be kind of a square design here. Now for our image, I'm going to go ahead and pick an image that works for this. So let's go ahead and upload an image. Yeah, I think that looks good for this. Now you could also have a little bit of a gap here. So if you wanted that, you would just reduce the size a little bit, and then it would give you a little bit of a standoff from the edges here. And let's go ahead and add a text field. And for this, let's go ahead and adjust our height. And again, we'll make it parent.height. And let's go ahead and put it in the center. And we'll put it in the middle here. Now for our width, let's go ahead and make that parent.width. And then we're going to subtract our image1 dot height. It doesn't really matter if I do height or width. And we're going to multiply that by 2. That puts us right in the center, assuming that we have the standoff the same here. Now, in this case, we can see that there's a little bit of a gap here on our container. So we could either eliminate that entirely, or we have to account for it. And I think our gap is 8. Let's take a look. So we've got, 8 all around here. So let's go ahead and adjust this here. So we go to minus 16. That way we've got it accounted for on the left and on the right here. And let's go ahead and change the text here. We'll go ahead and call this the facility issue reporting tool. That looks good. And let's go ahead and make the font size 36. And we'll go ahead and make this bold. All right, that looks pretty good there. Now for this container, we want to add buttons up here, but we also want our form. So let's go ahead and add another container here. And our first container is going to be a horizontal container for the buttons. And then let's go ahead and add another container, and this would be our form container. And for form containers or galleries, I typically use a vertical container. Now let's go ahead and adjust this height here. We don't want it to be flexible. And we'll go ahead and set it to 42. Again, this is where we're going to put buttons. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and add a button here right away. So we can kind of get this all set up. And that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and select that. This will be our submit button. And we'll go ahead and add the save icon on here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good there. Let's go ahead and add a gap here of 10. That way when we add another button, we may as well just copy this and we'll put that in there. This will be the last button that we have here, and we'll call this our history button. And for this, let's go ahead and use our history icon. All right, so those will be our 2 buttons here. So we'll have the option to submit, and then we'll have the option to view our submitted tickets that we put in here. All right, let's go ahead and change this. We don't want that. And again, we don't want that here either. So we got a nice clean slate here to work with for our form. All right, I went ahead and changed the names for everything. We are going to duplicate this page when we create our history. So let's go ahead and add our form now. And again, we use our modern form. And for this, we're going to go ahead and find our facility issue reporting. All right, so there is our form. Let's go ahead and add our missing fields here. And while we're doing this, let's put them in the correct order. We're going to have our issuer short name or reporter's email, that's fine to be down there. Normally it would be towards the top, but we're not going to really use it as part of this. And we want to make sure we have our reporter's organization, which is missing. Let's find that quick. So we'll say reported by and reporter's organization. And there we go. Let's put this up here. So we've got our short name, and we've got our organization. Then we want to have our location information. So we want to have our floor and room. And we don't have those, so let's find those. So floor and room. And let's go ahead and put that up here. And we got our location issue description. Then we're going to have our issue details. So then we're going to have our issue category. So we'll put that right up here. And date first observed, that's fine. Then we can have our impact level. Now we don't actually need our date closed because that's going to be done outside of this tool. So we've got our date first observed, our impact level. We want to have our safety hazard. So let's go ahead and add that field. And let's go ahead and put that up here. We'll go ahead and move this towards the bottom here. Safety hazard, immediate attention. All right, I think that is all the fields, and it looks like they're still in the correct order. That's looking good. Okay, now we can go ahead and add, actually we have to add a couple of custom cards. So we'll add 3 custom cards. Maybe 4. All right. And we'll go ahead and put this first one all the way at the top. This will be our directions that we're going to provide to the user. And then we're going to go put this probably right below that. And that'll be our general details maybe. And we want to have location details. So that'll be right above our floor observed. And then we want to do right above our issue category. All right, I think that looks good. Now let's go ahead and we're going to make the width of this parent.width. And the height for this is going to be our direction. So probably around 50 characters should work for that. And then our next one, we want that to be parent.width also. And for that one, we'll go ahead and go with 40. It's just going to be a label, so we don't need quite as much. And we'll do the same thing here. Parent.width. And we'll set that to 40. And we'll select this one and do the same thing here. And set that to 40. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and add text in here. And we'll go ahead and put that at the top. And we'll go ahead and parent.width also. And parent.height. Yep, that looks pretty good there. And let's go ahead and adjust our text. And for the text, all right, I think that text works for that. Let's go ahead and make this bold. And let's go ahead and make the font 16 for this, make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so let's go back here. And this is going to be our label header. This is going to be our label form header in screen. And let's go ahead and copy this. And we'll go ahead and paste that in here. And for the text for this, we'll say general details. And instead, we're going to put that in the center and in the middle. And let's go back over here. Now for this, let's go ahead and change the background of this. So we're going to go with, that looks about right, general details. And let's go ahead and change the name of this. Label, general details, screen. And let's go ahead and change the background for these two here so that they're also kind of stand out here. And then we'll go ahead and copy this and paste that in. Now this is going to be our location details. So let's just change that. And then this one is going to be our issue details. And say level issue details in screen. And same thing with this one. All right, so that looks pretty good there. And we want these to be basically on the same line. So let's go ahead and make some adjustments here. And before we start, let's check out these first. So we want this to be a 0, which is correct. And we want that to be on our 0 line. And then this data card, which we'll go ahead and just change the names here. So this is our form header and screen. And this will be our details header and screen. And this will be our location details and screen. And our issue details and screen. All right, now we want to make sure that this one has a y of 0, and this one we want to have a x of 0 and a y of 1. And we already adjusted this one. So these are both not where they're supposed to be. So let's go ahead and make this a 0. And this will be a y of 2. And this one will be an x of 1 and a y of 2. And what we're going to have to do is adjust pretty much everything for this setup and get everything where we want it to using the X and the Y for each of the data cards or objects. All right, there we've got pretty much everything where it needs to go. Now let's go ahead and change these. So we don't want to say find items. In this case, we'll say select organization. And we'll say select floor. And then we'll do our issue category, select category, and our impact level, select impact level. And for our yes, no's, we'll just say select yes or no. And we'll copy that and paste that for our other one. All right. And for our status, now for our reporter's email, our facility status, and our reported buys, we're not actually going to set them as part of this. We're going to set them, but we're not going to let the user do this. But let's go ahead and just clean this up anyway. So we'll say set status here. And for our reported buys, we'll go ahead and set that to select person. All right. So now we've got everything changed as far as our placeholder text. Let's make some other small adjustments here. So for our location issue description, I think we want that to be after our floor observed. So let's just check our X here. So that's 0. We want this one to be an X of 1. And we want this one to be an X of 2. There we go. Now we've got things in the proper order here. Actually, I think I want floor observed to be first. So let's go and put that over here. There we go. Now for our location description, we want to have a little bit more options here. We set this to a maximum of 400. So let's go ahead and change that. And we want to give it a little bit more size here. So let's change our height and we'll set that to 144. Give them a little bit more space to type in here. And same thing here, we gave them a little bit of space here. So we'll set this to 75. And for our rumor area observed, I think for placeholder or the max, I think what we could probably do is just 100 for that. So we'll just set this to 100. And for our date first observed, we don't want them to be able to do a date in the future. So let's go ahead and set our end date here. We'll find our end. So for our end date, let's go ahead and set that to today. And if we go ahead and test that, we'll be able to not select anything beyond today, which is the functionality that we're looking for here. Now for our facility issue status, when they save, we want it to set it to in review. So let's go back to our update property here. And actually, let's just unlock all of these. So first, let's go ahead and select everything. And let's just unlock everything because we're probably going to make some changes to a couple of these. So let's just make it easier on ourselves and select everything to unlock. Actually, we don't need these. All right, so if we come over here, let's unlock these. All right, so now when we look at our facility issue status, let's go ahead and change our update property here. And I always keep the previous version in there. But what we want to do is our facility issue status. So let's go ahead and find our facility issue status right here. And we want to set it to in review. All right. So now every time they save it, it's going to save that status as in review. And we're only going to allow the user the ability to save it one time. So after everything has been submitted, so they're not going to be able to come back in here and edit things and make changes to it. You can design the functionality to support that, but for this design, we're just going to set this as this way. The user can submit it, and that's a one-time deal. Most of the time on any kind of a trouble ticket, you only get one option. You don't get the option to go back in there and make changes to it for a lot of these kinds of systems. So we're going to kind of emulate that approach for this. Now for our reported by and our reporter's email, we want that to be automatic, but we have to add a couple other things before we can do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our app settings. So come up here and let's adjust our on start. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here. And let's go ahead and paste our standard on start. And all this is doing is setting our username, email, and image based off the user property here. I do this in pretty much all of my apps, and I did explain how to set this up in one of the earlier app designs, but it's very simple. Again, you can kind of freeze it and copy and paste and use this if you like, but it basically just pulls the user profile, sets the name, email, and image, and then we also have the option here for the entire user profile, so if we do need something else, we can still leverage that. Now, this works great for most things, but for our reported by, because we're using a users table, we actually need to do one more thing. So let's go ahead and what we're going to do is set, and we're going to call this our GBL user table name. And that'll be the name of the person that's logged in based off of the user table. So let's go ahead and do a lookup. And we'll go to the users table. And what we're going to do is set the primary email is equal to our GBL user email. And let's go ahead and close this out here. And there we go. So now all we're doing here is looking at the users table and saying, if the logged in user, we want that information based off of this matching here. Now, you have to be careful. We're using the users table, and we know that the formatting will be the same as the user, but if something, for example, was in all bold versus your normal case for emails, then you would have to adjust maybe putting everything in lowercase or uppercase to make sure that you actually have equal values here. This is common if you're pulling from something like an Oracle system where everything's in uppercase, for example, with the way that the data is stored, then you would need to account for that with this process as well. All right, let's go ahead and we'll run that unstart here. And there we go. So let's just copy this because we're going to need this here in a second anyway. So we'll copy that. And the reported bys update property is going to leverage that. So let's go ahead. Again, I always like keeping these things in here, and we're just going to paste that. And you can see that that works without any problems perfectly. And again, all we're doing is saying this is the user, no different than if we were selecting the person here. Very similar. Now, same thing here. We just need the email property. So let's go ahead and find our variable for email, GBL user email. And that'll pass the email into that field. So these three fields are set automatically. We don't have to do anything with them. Now let's go ahead and make the property not visible. We don't need to see these three things. So we'll select these three here and turn off the visibility. There we go. because the user doesn't have to worry about them at that point. All right, let's go ahead and adjust our submit here. So we'll say submit form, and this is just form 1 right now. All right, and then we want to change our on success. So let's go to our on success property here for the form, and here we go. And what we want to do is a notification. So we'll say notify, notify, and we'll say successfully saved. And we'll say a notification type of success. And we'll just keep that up there for a second. And then we want to navigate to our thank you screen. And we'll do a screen transition of cover right. All right, so that's what's going to happen when we hit the submit button here. Now we want to take a look at our required fields. And in this case, we want every field to be required. Let's go ahead and change the name of this while I'm looking at this. And let's go ahead and select all of these so we can make them all required at the same time here. All right, let's go to our required. We'll say true for this, but we want to make sure that the issue status, reporter's email, and the reported by is not true. So I went and changed those back to false. And the reason why is because they're not going to be filled out. They're going to just be automatically updated. So we don't want that to create an issue when we're actually saving these 3 items in here. Now let's go ahead and adjust our history. We don't want this to be visible if they haven't submitted anything. So let's go take a look at our visibility setting here. And for this, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do an if, and we're going to do a count rows. And specifically, we're going to filter the facility issue reports based on our reported by dot primary email being equal to the logged in user email address. So let's go ahead and close those 2 out, and we want it to be greater than 0. So basically, if they have any records at all, they'll be able to see this button here. And let's go ahead and make this true and false and close this out. All right, so we can see that I don't have anything submitted right now, so I can't see this button. Now we want to adjust, before we select away from this, our on select. And when it's visible, we want it to be able to navigate the person to the, oh, we actually haven't created this, but we want to select this and be able to navigate to our history screen, which we're gonna have to create. So we'll go ahead and create that screen right away. I'm gonna leave this as an error just so that it's easier for me to select this in the future. But let's go ahead and we're just gonna duplicate our main screen. So we'll duplicate this. All right, let's collapse main screen here. So we've got main screen 1. Let's go ahead and copy this, and then we'll do a replace. And we wanna replace our main screen 1 with our reporting history screen. And we'll replace all. All right, let's go back to our screen here. So we've got a reporting screen. All right, on our reporting screen, we don't need our containers here or here. We're going to use a table control, so we can go ahead and delete these. And let's go ahead and add a table control here to our facility issue reports. And let's go ahead and change the name here. So this would be our reporting history for, we'll add a space, BL user name. All right, there we go. So we got a reporting history for Travis. That looks good there. Now in our gap over here, let's go ahead and add a button. So let's insert we'll do a left option here. And we'll go ahead and set our height and width basically to our parent height. Yeah, we'll do the same thing for our width. And then we'll go ahead and set a padding here of 20. I think that'll be sufficient. And our height's not correct here, so let's go ahead and fix that. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and turn off our border here. So we'll say none. And for our back buttons on select, we want that to be navigate back to our previous page. We'll do cover and close that out. All right, so that'll be our back button to get there. All right, let's go ahead and fill the space here. We'll use short date automatically here, and we'll enable multi-select. And let's go ahead and change our width. And again, we'll go ahead and put that down, and we'll say parent.width. And then we'll do the same thing for our parent.height. All right, so now we're filling our space. Now, again, we have our borders of 8 all around the container. So let's go ahead and subtract 16. And then we'll do the same thing for our width, just to make sure that we are in the center here. All right, so now we're centered. Makes everything look correctly here. Now we could also get rid of that border if we wanted to. So if we wanted to select this container here, we could get rid of the padding, and that would fix the problem also. And in the case of our table control, that's probably worth taking a look at, because we are going to have a lot more controls on here than maybe would fit. So we're going to have a scrolling option here. So we may want to get rid of this, actually, now that I think about it. So let's do that quick. And then we can just, again, remove that 16. Just so we maximize our viewing area here. I think that looks good. All right, let's go ahead and adjust our stuff here. So we want it to be date first, observe first. And we want our issue title right here. And then we probably want to have our floor, which we don't have. So let's go ahead and add that field. So we want to have our floor. So let's go ahead and add a lot of our fields that we're missing here. So floor, category, and our room. And in this case, we want them to see our status. So let's make sure that they can see their status. Looks good. Okay, let's add those in there. All right. So we have our short name. And we want to have our floor, I think makes sense to me. And then probably our room. And probably want to have our issue category, our impact level. Is it a safety hazard or not? Is it an immediate attention? Then we'll have our status, our date closed, and our resolution notes. All right, I think that looks good like that. Now we want to take a look at, we'll change the name of this. So this will be our table. So the to history. And let's go ahead and our room area, we just want that to be room. And let's go ahead and set that to 110 probably work, I think, for the width there. And we want our issue category. And for that one, we'll do 130. And then our floor observed, we're just going to call that our floor. And for that, we'll go ahead and set that to 105. And then our safety hazard, we'll select that and set it at 125. Our resolution notes, we'll set that to 150. And let's look at our immediate attention. We'll set that to 170. And then we've got our impact level here. And we'll set that to 120. And we'll look at our facility issue status. And we'll set that to status. And we've got a couple long names in there. So we'll set this to 190. Then our date closed, we'll set that to 115. And our date first observed, we'll change that to date observed. And we'll set that to 140. And then our location issue description, we'll go ahead and call that description. And we'll set that to 120. And then we'll take a look at our issue short name, and we'll call that issue title. And we'll set that to 150. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. These will all adjust when we open it up and actually have something in there. Right now, we don't have anything to display. So it's not going to really do much for us here. All right, let's go back to our main screen so we can adjust our selection for the button here. So let's take a look at this. And this will be our reporting history screen. And we'll do cover right, and we'll go ahead and close it out. All right, so everything's looking good for this. Now I probably want to adjust a couple of the titles for these options here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that quick. All right, so I went through and made some adjustments here, gave an example for these two, and then I just framed these two down here as more of a question. All right, I think let's close this here, and then let's go to our other page. I think I forgot to set our table control here. Yeah, so we have to adjust our item property here. So let's change this items here. We want it to only display the ones we submit. So we're going to filter this, or the logged in user, I should say, and we're going to say reported by that primary email is equal to the GBL user email. And that'll just give us what the logged in user has submitted, but we also want to sort it. So let's go ahead and add a sort by columns here. And we're going to sort it by our date first observed. We'll select that and we'll put it in sort order descending. All right. And we'll see how this is going to look after we actually load it up here. Let's go ahead and save. And I think that's pretty much it for the design of this. Now, this interface, again, is just going to be the submission for the form. I'm going to show you how to build the management of this using a model-driven app. So you can kind of split things up. You don't have to do everything inside of a Canvas app or everything inside of a model-driven app. You can use the best of both worlds. And in the case of submitting, a Canvas app is great as a submission form. And then you can use your model-driven app in the case of how we're going to set this up to kind of manage this process from the administrator or the facility managing team or whoever's kind of running this entire process. They would use the model-driven app, not the Canvas app, and they leverage all the capabilities that are out of the box of a model-driven app as part of that process. Let's go ahead and take a look at our solution. We're going to have to make a couple of adjustments in our solution, and then we're going to build our model-driven app. So this next part of the video, if you don't have Dataverse and you don't have the ability to do model-driven apps or leverage Dataverse tables, you can't do this next part using SharePoint or Excel or some of those other data options that are out there. So this next part might not be applicable to you, but you'll be able to see how all this works. And there's going to be a couple of other things we're going to kind of go back and forth. And I'll put in the description of this video when we're going to start doing some of the testing. So if we missed anything on our Canvas app, we'll adjust those things at that point. So I'll put that in the description so you can kind of see where the testing phase is. And then we'll test the different submission aspects of this. Well, let's go ahead and check out our solution now. All right, so in my solution, what I did is I went through and already adjusted all of the forms and the views. So if we go ahead and take a look at the form here, we'll see that in this form, it's just, at least in this particular example, just the person update. And that's pretty much the only thing they have to do as part of this process is just select a person. And then I just changed, person to notify. So very minor adjustments here. Let's go back to our other table. Now, in the case of our facility issue form, I did go through and make quite a few changes here. And again, I just organized the data very similar to what we did inside of our Canvas app, just to kind of get everything all set up and ready for us. I went through and added this in there. Now, one of the things we need to do as part of this process, you'll see that we only have one required field. Now, in the case of the form, everything was pretty much required. Now, how I envision this being used is the form is how people are submitting. The admins are just kind of managing it. But could the managers add something in here? And the answer is yes, they could. Now, you might want to go through and make all of these fields required if that's the case, because you want the people that are inputting this to have all the same kinds of requirements as far as data integrity. So we want to make sure all of the fields get added in here. All right, so I went through and made all of these required fields. Now, in the case of the person for the notification table, I also made that a required field also. Now, we want to do something special with these date closed and resolution notes. When the status is completed or admin closed, we want to make sure that the date closed gets updated and that we get resolution notes as well. So we're going to add a business rule. So let's go ahead and click business rule here, and we'll add a new business rule. All right, so for this business rule, we're going to go ahead and change the name here, and we're going to say when the status is completed or admin closed. And the field is going to be our issue status there, and it's going to be equal to admin closed or completed, and we'll hit apply. Now come back over here to our components, and we want to set our business required. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and say that our date completed or date closed is business required. And we'll go ahead and say set date closed as required and hit apply. And we'll add another business required here. And we'll say this one is set resolution notes required. And we'll find our resolution notes down here. And we'll say that that is now required. And let's go back to our components. And we want to set not required as the alternative here. And that again will be our date closed, and we'll say not business required, and we'll say that date closed as not required, and apply. And then we'll add another one here for our resolution notes. So we'll find our resolution notes, and again we'll say set resolution notes. Then we'll add a not in here, and let's go ahead and apply. And then we want to add one more thing, setting our field value. So we want to set our date closed to clear. And we'll say reset date closed. Now, in the case of the resolution notes, maybe we want that to be additive so they can continue to add more things on there. So we're not going to reset our resolution notes because they could put notes in there as much as they want. We don't want to delete those if they've done that. So let's just hit apply here. And let's take a look at our information here. Let's go ahead and call this status of completed or admin closed. And you can add a description if you want also. In this case, I'm not going to. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the validate button up here. And it looks like we have an error. Oh, it looks like I didn't set this. So that was our resolution notes. Either that or I forgot to hit apply. That's a very common issue. All right, so let's go ahead and validate again and save. And then we'll go ahead and activate this. And we'll confirm with an activate here. All right, now it is activated because now we're seeing the deactivate. So let's go ahead and close out of this and go back to our solution. All right, let's go into charts and let's go ahead and create a couple of basic charts that we can leverage inside of our app. And we'll go ahead and let's do our short name here. And then we'll do our issue category here. And let's go ahead and change the name of this. And we'll call this the category breakdown of issues, and save and close. And let's go ahead and add another one here. And for this one, let's go ahead and select our issue category. And for this one, let's do a stacked column. And let's do date first observed. And then we'll add another category of our impact level. And let's change the name of this to facility issues monthly reporting, and save and close. And let's go ahead and add another chart. And for this one, let's do a pie chart. And we'll go ahead and select our safety hazard. And again, we'll select our safety hazard here. And let's go ahead and change this one to safety hazard issue summary, and that should give us a pie chart of whether it was a safety hazard or not, and save and close. And we'll do one more chart. Now for this one, let's go ahead and do our issue short name, and then we'll do our facility issue status. And let's go ahead and change the name of this to our status summary, and save and close. All right, now we want to do a couple cloud flows here. And let's go ahead and add an automation. This would just be an instant automation. And we'll go ahead and skip this. Now what we need to do is we've got our notify list. And in that case, we have a location field called person, but I also want to make sure that the name field has the name as well. So whenever we add a row, I want to go ahead and make sure that that table gets updated. And we'll set the scope to organization. And then we'll add a new step in here. And this one, we're going to get the information. So let's get a row ID. And in this case, we're going to get our users table, and it'll be based off of our person value. And let's add a new step, and then we want to update our row. So update a row, and this will be our facility table. For our notify list, our row ID will be the one that was updated. And we want to update the name field here with the full name that we pulled from the users table. All right, I went through and updated the titles a little bit on here, and let's go ahead and change the name of this. And let's say update admin name field and save. All right, now we have one more flow we need to create. Let's go ahead and create another flow, and we'll skip this again. Now this one we want to notify the admins whenever there's a new item submitted. So we're going to go ahead and when a row is added, and again, they can't modify, so we don't have to worry about modifications. We'll just select added here, and we'll again find our facility issue report table this time. And we want to make sure that it's the organization, so everything that gets entered in there. And let's add a new step, and again, it'll be Dataverse. And in this case, we want to list our rows, and this will be for our who do we need to notify? So we're going to look at our notify list. Now we could select specific columns, but I'm going to leave that as is, but we will name this. Let's just keep track of everything. This one's going to have a few more steps in it. And this is to get the to of email. So we're getting everybody that's basically entered into this table. There could be 2, could be 6, could be 8, could be a lot of different people, but we want to make sure we get all of them. So let's go ahead and add another step in here. And in this case, we want to get the email address of the person that submitted this. So we're going to go ahead and get a row ID. And in this case, it'll be the users table again. And again, this will be our reported by value. Now let's try and change the name of this. This is going to be our reported by email. And let's go ahead and send an email. In this case, we'll do a notification. All right, let's go ahead and find our primary email. And for the subject, we'll go ahead and say new facility issue report submitted. And for the body, let's go ahead and say, all right, so I went and put that in there. And I think that's probably good enough for an email. Again, they are the person that submitted it. They want to get notified that, hey, it was actually submitted. So that's kind of what this step here is. Let's go ahead and add another step here. And we want to initialize a variable. So let's find a variable here. And we want to initialize it. And this is going to be a string variable. And we need to put all the email addresses for our admins into this. So this is going to be our email list. And then we'll add another step here, and we'll go ahead and get a row ID. And in this case, it will be our users table. And for this one, it's going to be our person. And that's going to be from our list rows to email. So we're looking for our person value here. And that'll put it inside of an apply to each. And then what we can do is we can append to a string variable. So again, we're going to look for our variable. And we're going to look for append to a string variable here. And it'll be here. And this we're going to do is our primary email for our get a row ID. Now, again, we have a couple, so if we hadn't changed the names, this might have made it kind of confusing there. And we're going to go ahead and put a semicolon between these here. And let's go ahead and change the name of this. And this will be our admin emails. And then we're going to go ahead and add another step here. And again, this will be that email. Now you could also use a couple different approaches. You could use the standard email approach and you could link it to a mailbox, for example, or you could set this up with some sort of a developer account that essentially you don't monitor that email address. So there are different options. This is just one that I find to be very helpful. You could also do HTTP send a request using SharePoint. That also works great. I've used all of them, but I really like this option. So let's go ahead and put in our var email list. So this will be our semicolon delimited list of email addresses. And for our subject, we'll say new facility issue report submitted. And for our body, let's go ahead and put in there. All right, that looks good. So just letting them know that there's a new request. Now this is going to be a link. I'm going to hyperlink to the system, but we haven't actually built this. This is going to be the model-driven app, but that'll give them a direct link inside of the email that they can click and get back into there. And I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and change the name of this now. And this will be our notify admins of new facility issue submission. And let's go ahead and save. And we'll come back in here and add that link later on. Let's go ahead and actually create our model-driven app now. And go to our apps. And let's go ahead and add a new app. And this will be a model-driven app. And let's go ahead and call this the facility issue reporting system. And we'll hit create. All right, let's go ahead and add a Dataverse table. And let's find our facility. So we're going to go ahead and add both of these. And let's go ahead and change the name of the group here. So this will be our facility issue management. All right, that looks good there. Let's go up to our settings here. And let's go take a look at our navigation. We're going to enable areas and collapsible groups. And that's fine. We probably aren't going to use them, but at least this allows us to collapse this. I'm not sure that we're going to use areas. If I was building this app in a normal work, what I would probably do is I would restrict access to the model-driven app to the admins, or I would create a way for using a security role linked to a team that's specifically with admins, and then you'd be able to manage that within inside of the app here. And then for the Canvas app component, most, if not all, of the organization would probably need access to that. And again, we didn't build it for multiple buildings, but you could also put in, all the different buildings. Maybe you have multiple buildings in your organization. You could put all of those as a drop-down choice list, and then this would work for all facilities, and potentially every person in your organization would get access. So you would give access to a security group that all of your personnel are in to that app, and then you would limit access in this app. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. I've done a couple of videos already on setting things up like that, but I can specifically cover this one in the same kind of a setup. Let me know in the comments if that's something you're interested in. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our facility issue reports. All right, everything's looking pretty good. Again, I set up the views and everything outside of this. It's pretty easy to adjust those. And again, I've done that in a couple of videos at this point, but that's looking pretty good there. Let's go ahead and save. Now, one thing we might want to do is adjust our logos or our table images that are here as well. Now, the way I like to do that is if we come back to our solution, we come down here to more, and we do a web resource, and we find our file here, and then we upload our images here. So in this case, here is a building, and I'm going to go ahead and select English, and we'll go ahead and enable this, and we'll just say this is unmanaged building icon, and hit save. And then we're going to get a web resources option here as well. And then we can add another one. And this will be for our selecting a person. Now I'll call that an unmanaged person icon. And let's hit English and hit save. So now they're going to be available. And more importantly, when I look at these web resources here, we can see that it's got our OSP on the front of it, which indicates that it's something that we added in there. That's a lot of the reason why I put it here versus I added in, or versus adding it from the app. If you add it in the app, it's not going to give you that OSP indicating that it's part of an unmanaged solution in this environment. Now, if we come back to our app here, all we have to do is select the selection here, and then we can come down here to our icon and use a web resource. And this will just look for building, and then we'll see that building option that we added in here. And then we can do the same thing for our notify list. Let's go ahead and adjust that quick. And again, I'll look for person. And then we've got this pops up here. Now let's go ahead and save and publish. And we can see that our icons have been adjusted here. All right, I think we are ready to actually start the testing process. So let's go ahead and open up our app and test it out. All right, so for the first test, let's go ahead and try out our Canvas app. So we'll say hole in wall in room 123. We'll say headquarters. This will be our first floor here. And we'll say room 123, and we'll call it a break room. Now I forgot to select this to multi-line, and it looks like I forgot to do this one also. So that's something I'll have to go through and adjust for both of these, is to make the multi-line. That'll just move the cursor to the top here so you're actually filling the entire space. I went through and updated those quick, and let's go ahead and say, well, we'll just say what we have there, ceiling tile above the sink in the break room is moldy. Issue category, we'll go ahead and call that a building damage first observed. We'll go ahead and say that it was on the 19th at 3 o'clock. Impact level, we'll say that that is medium. Nobody likes mold. Well, sometimes people consider mold a safety hazard, but we'll go ahead and leave this as no. Is immediate attention required? Probably not, unless it's black mold. Let's go ahead and submit. And we got our notification up here, and we've got everything is working correctly. Now let's go ahead and refresh our page, and we should see the ability for our historicals. And there we go. We have the ability to look at our history. We'll let it continue to load just to confirm. And yep. And if we go over here, we can see that on the 19th, we have a hole in the wall on the first floor. So everything is working as expected. We have no date closed or resolution. So everything is working. Let's go ahead and hit the back button here. Yep. And everything is working correctly on this form here. Now let's go check out the model-driven app and see how things are working for that. All right, so for our model-driven app, everything is loaded in here correctly. Now we didn't actually add anybody, so the email probably failed. Let's go ahead and add myself in here. And now I'm added. Let's go ahead and save and close. So I've been added in here. I'm available apparently. And if we come back over here, now let's go ahead and create a new item and see what the process is in this interface here. So we'll go ahead and call this one slippery floor near vending machines. All right, I went ahead and filled in everything. I called this one a safety hazard at critical. Let's go ahead and save and close this. Now we've got 2 in here. But we'll notice that we don't have any color coding. So we actually have to go in and adjust that in our app. So I'll show you how to do that here also. So in our solution, we want to take a look at our facility issue report, and this is our view that we're displaying. So let's go ahead and open this up, and let's go ahead and switch to our components here. And we want to add a component, get more components. Let's go ahead and search for Power Apps, and we'll look for our Power Apps grid control and hit add. And let's go ahead and select that, and we'll collapse this, and we want to enable editing, yes, so we can actually do some editing in the view itself. And let's go ahead and we'll enable grouping, we'll enable aggregation, multi-select. You can enable jump bar and pagination. A lot of times I leave that not enabled, but I do want to enable the options set colors. That's specifically what we're looking for, and hit done here. Save. And we want to save and publish. Now back in our app, we're going to see that we have our colors in here. So everything is working as expected here. Now, we did create those charts, so what did we do with them? So we've got our charts here, and again, they're just very basic charts. We've got 4 of them that we created, and again, everything seems to be working correctly here. So again, 50-50 on this, and then our status summary here. Everything's currently in review, and actually, let's go ahead and test that. So if we looked at this one here, let's go ahead and say this is completed. We'll put the date closed as of yesterday, and we'll just say it was completed. And we'll hit save and close here. And if we come back down to our status summary, what we're going to see is that we've got completed and in review. And one of the beauties of these charts is that we can select these and it's going to filter all of our different data just by selecting these. That's one of the reasons why I like these. And one of the reasons why this is such a great option using a Canvas form, the way we set it up, and a model-driven app, is you get all of the functionality of a model-driven app with very little work. To try to create all of this as part of a Canvas app, it can be done for the most part, but it's a lot more work than it is just to use a model-driven app. And for such a simple process as this is a great way to do it. Is you've got the flexibility of that Canvas app. You can make that form look any way you want. And then you've got the model-driven app that allows the admins to come in here and manage everything very easily. And if we go ahead and close this, we have the ability now to very easily do filters across all of these, much easier than it is with a Canvas app. So if I wanted to see just the ones that were yes or no, I can easily sort it, or I can filter by specifically yes, and it very quickly applies the filter. A lot of that functionality would take quite a lot of time to build as part of a Canvas app, and you get it out of the box with a model-driven app. So that's why I wanted to explain that this is a great option. If you have access to Dataverse and you have a little bit of knowledge on how to use a model-driven app, this can allow you to very quickly build a form for some sort of a form-based process for doing a request or doing some kind of a submission, and then using a model-driven app to kind of manage that process outside of the Canvas app. You could do a lot of this again inside the Canvas app, but this is a very quick and easy way to set these things up. All right, hopefully you found the content helpful. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. Again, we're really close to getting to that 1,000 subscribers, and that'll enable monetization for this, and some of this content will actually produce a little bit of revenue, which offsets the actual cost of doing all this. So definitely hit that like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Until next time.